On today's Locked On NBA Game Night, are the Nuggets having the best roster around Nikola Jokic this season?
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
Let's get it going on the Locked On NBA Game Night podcast, the Thursday edition, recapping everything that's happened around the association on this Thursday. I'm Rylan, Stiles, host of Locked On Thunder. That's David Ramil, host of Locked On Heat. And we're going to break down the big upset that happened between the Boston Celtics and the Milwaukee Bucks. The Clippers falling to the Houston Rockets, continuing their downslide. And I think that the Denver Nuggets have the best roster around Nikola Jokic to date. So a lot going on today on this Thursday. David, let's start with the Bucks Celtics as we resume play here away from the NBA Cup. The Bucks got a massive game from Kyle Kuzma and a massive upset of the Boston Celtics, who have been playing some great basketball. Let's go to Camille Davis from Locked On Bucks to hear about this win.
That's a real good win for the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm the sick and tired Camille Davis coming to you after the Bucks' 15-point win over the Celtics, a much-needed win for a Bucks team that's been hearing a lot of noise. It was a shooting variance game for sure. The Celtics shot great from three in the first half, shot terribly from three in the second half. Meanwhile, you have Bobby Portis and Kyle Kuzma combining for 58 points on 80% shooting from the field. You got to try to win games when Kuz and BP give you that much. Plus, they got contributions from Kevin Porter Jr., who started the game off really slow, picked it up in the second half, finished with a triple-double of his own. Also, shout out to Cole Anthony and to Gary Harris. Cole Anthony has not been in the rotation since Kevin Porter Jr. came back, and with reason, he had not been playing good. So he bounced back in this game a bit for the Bucks with some impactful minutes. Plus, Gary Harris, a 0 in that points column, 2 rebounds for him, 2 assists, something like that? Yeah, but he was a team high plus 26, did all the little things for the Bucks, played defense, moved the ball, etc., etc. A really good win for a Bucks team that desperately needed one.
So as the Celtics started out shooting well, they end up shooting 28% from three on the game. Let's go to John Corrales of Locked On Celtics to break down how the Celtics ended up falling in this one.
You can say it's a make-miss league, but the Boston Celtics really let the Bucks get in their heads. I'm John Corrales from the Locked On Celtics podcast. The Celtics really never came out of the locker room at halftime. They were up 14 at one point in the second quarter, but then the Bucks really started talking trash. Kyle Kuzma, Bobby Portis hit a shot in Jaylen Brown's face, got up in his face, took a tech, and that just lit him on fire. And the Celtics played passive the rest of the way. They missed everything in the second half, but they could just never get that momentum going. They never really got back to playing that Celtics basketball. So credit to the Bucks. They did what they had to do. They got into Boston's heads, and they ran away with this thing in the second half. The Celtics scored 13 points in the third quarter. Brutal. Maybe the break was bad for them. I'll be talking about it on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
The break came at the wrong time for the Celtics. They had heated up, David, and then they come out and fall to the Milwaukee Bucks in this one, who were lifted, of course, as Camille said, by Bobby Portis Jr. And Kyle Kuzma. I mean, this was a strange game. Obviously, no Giannis in this one, but the Bucks still get the win. Let's start with Milwaukee. Like they have heard a lot of the chatter, like she was mentioning about the Giannis trade, and this was a great response for them to beat Boston.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it kind of underscores just how wide open everything is in the Eastern Conference, with just 7 games separating teams 2 through 10 and up in the standings right now. Milwaukee at the bottom of that ranking right now. They're just in the play-in tournament if the playoffs were to begin today. And so I think for Milwaukee, just getting that kind of big game and finding a way to come up with a victory despite not having Giannis out there, kind of putting the noise behind him, figuring out, you know what, this is still a competent roster. At least the expectations going into the season were that they were going to still be much better than they've actually been able to play. They've dealt with the injury issues and on the off the court distractions and still found a good way to win. But I've got to love John's arrogance there on behalf of Boston Celtics Nation there. It's never anything the opposing team does. It's just, we as the Celtics just couldn't find a way to win the game. It wasn't the fact that Milwaukee actually played a better game or anything like that. I just got to love it.
Could not play Celtics basketball, but they did play
Right.
basketball still, and they ended up playing dreadful basketball instead of Celtics basketball. They shot 38% from the floor, 28% from three, and just 76% at the free throw line. They didn't do really anything well in this game, but Jordan Walsh continued his improved season. He's making a run at the most improved player award. He had 20 points on 80% shooting, 3 for 4 from three for the defensive menace, who also collected 3 steals in this game. But still, Boston obviously ends up folding. But with Boston, this break, of course, might have done some harm to them as they really caught a rhythm. But overall, this has been a very resilient team. They've, of course, been without Tatum all season long. Jaylen Brown stepped up. Jordan Walsh has stepped up. You know what you can get on a nightly basis with the two streaky guys of Derek White and Peyton Pritchard. I really liked what Boston's been able to accomplish here sans Tatum. And I think that this is just kind of one of those games in the NBA where things are going to happen, because they went from 7th in the East to 3rd in the East in a matter of minutes. And that goes to your point about how wide open the Eastern Conference is.
Absolutely. Yeah, Boston, I think the break really, I can't say that it's really impacted the team that much. It wasn't a long extended period of time or anything like that. And I know you get into a certain kind of rhythm and everything like that, but that wasn't necessarily the case tonight. I just think Milwaukee wound up playing pretty well, and Boston just had an off night. I'm not going to attribute it to this short break or anything like that, but the Celtics, I'm still not a believer, though, to be honest with you, Rylan. Like, I see this group, and I know they've been playing well, and maybe they're just kind of trying to tread water until Tatum does return, but it's something seems to be missing with this team. And it's not just, they just don't have that kind of consistency as well as they've played of late. And while, despite the fact that they are currently 3rd in the Eastern Conference standings, I just see this team kind of missing something that they have in years past, but they still have a competent enough roster, good coaching, et cetera, and some championship experience to kind of tie it all together. But I don't know. I see this group, and it's just hard to kind of see any team in the Eastern Conference that really stands out. You've got the Detroit Pistons, and there are questions about that group as well. The Knicks, I think you might be inclined to be a little bit more of a believer in them, but everybody else in the East, it kind of just feels like they're all packed into that same tier, where it could be any one of those teams that might find a way to stand out at the end. You've got Miami, the team I cover, kind of slipping in the rankings of late, and then getting off to this incredibly hot start. Boston struggled to start the season, and then they played well of late. And just all these kind of teams that are just kind of packed in there. And it just feels like you never really know which one of them might find a way to I don't know, come out on top or wind up being consistently good enough, with all these teams facing different injury issues or different consistency issues throughout the season.
Yeah, and with Boston, it's such an interesting situation that they have going on right now. I mean, Jaylen Brown is averaging 29 points a night, shooting 49% from the floor. Like, he's been really good this season for them, and they found ways to win. They're the 3 seed in the East right now, despite dropping this game. But that front court is just not capable of playing in the postseason. It's not capable of them, being where they want to be, even if they get Tatum back. And who knows how good Tatum will be when he gets back. Initially, we know who he's going to be long-term, but initially, coming off of an Achilles injury, like, that's a lot to put on him. But since the East is so wide open, like, have they done enough, given that they have these role players who can stand out, given the level of Brown that he's playing at, and given the fact that they seem to be confident that Tatum will return at some point this season, and the East is wide open? Have they done enough to, like, really move you to the sense of, at the deadline, they should try to add something to this front court? They should try to add something to this team? Or do you think that this is a season that's like, yeah, it's nice that you're 3 right now, just don't do anything, just see how the season plays out, and then you really regroup this summer?
Yeah, given the fact that they had those financial constraints that led to the offseason moves in the first place, I don't know that there'll be buyers around the trade deadline. Like, it's they punted on this season purposefully, and I don't know that that purpose has changed with this group, despite the fact that they've exceeded expectations. So it to me, it's just more of a reflective of the fact that these teams in the East are all kind of struggling and have their moments here and there, and will shine at various points throughout the season. but I don't look at this Boston group, and I don't know that the front office does either, and says, oh, okay, we're one piece away. One piece away from what? Nobody sees that group as legitimate contenders, despite the fact that they're currently where they are in the standings. And so I don't know that they're going to do any kind of additions to this roster or changes to it that's going to cement them as a solid contender. And look, let's be honest, once Tatum does come back, that's going to disrupt something. Like, as good as a player as he is, et cetera, you know that once he comes back, there's going to be some obvious rust. There's going to be some struggle trying to incorporate him, and there's going to be a disruption, because that's almost invariably how it works out when a star player winds up coming back into the fold.
Coming up, let's talk about bona fide contenders as the Houston Rockets escape the Clippers, and the Nuggets might have put together the best roster around Nikola Jokic thus far. But first, I want to say right now, we're good friends over at ZocDoc, folks. Go check them out today, because, guys, it's 2025, nearly 2026, and these days, the days of waiting around for something to become a full-blown emergency before you go see a doctor, they're over. No more walking it off for 6 months. No more pretending that weird shoulder stiffness is just sleeping on it wrong. It's time to take your health seriously, and ZocDoc makes it easier than ever to do so, because staying healthy is more than just hitting the gym or eating right. It's about actually getting things checked out when something feels off. Using ZocDoc makes scheduling easier. You search their in-network doctors and book right in the app. You have real appointment times instead of lists, including same-day visits if you need to get in that quickly. It lets you compare providers using real patient reviews, not ads. And I love the fact that the app is super clean. Honestly, it removes the stress of trying to find the right doctor to go to. So stop putting off your doctor's appointments and get the care that you need by going to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA. ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA. We're back on the Locked On Game Night podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day, the number one sports podcast network in the world. I'm Rylan Stiles, that's David Ramil, and we're bringing you Thursdays around the NBA, including tonight's action. We've talked Bucks, Celtics. Let's talk Houston and LA Clippers as the Rockets escape in at home 115-113 over the lowly LA Clippers, who did have Kawhi, and he scored 24 points on 40% shooting. Did have James Harden, he scored 22 points on 38% shooting. Like they were themselves in this game, whatever version of that it is, and they could not escape Houston as they put Houston down to the wire, including limiting Kevin Durant to just 16 points on 35% shooting. Alpi only had 22 points on 40% shooting, but he did have 15 rebounds to go along with 5 assists and 4 steals. And ultimately, you did see the 20-point night from Raymond Thompson be a big push and lift to Houston getting this win. This was a fun game to watch. This is arguably the best game on the slate tonight, with neither side growing a double-digit lead. 2 lead changes, though, in that span, and 6 ties in this one. David, let's start with Houston. We've seen a quarter of the season at this point. Their defense feels really legit. Their offense is much improved given the fact that they have added Kevin Durant to the fold. The guard depth is something that everybody will point to. And even in this game, they had 18 turnovers tonight against the Clippers and were still able to win. And that's honestly a bit of an indictment on the Clippers to force 18 turnovers and never get a double-digit lead and still not win the game late. But how do you feel about this Houston team, who has had big wins and big moments, and even in their losses, like pushing OKC to double overtime? Like, even that was a little bit of a statement, but they've also had some games like this where they don't look like bona fide NBA title threats.
Yeah, they've got their weaknesses for sure. And I think we'll see that sporadically throughout the course of the season. But it almost feels like they're still good enough based on the fact that they have their system in place. You know what kind of a team this is. They were great defensively last year. They add Durant. Well, guess what? They're still very good defensively this year as well. And that's the baseline for what we're expecting from this group, is that they're going to be that kind of competent defense, and they're going to have to find a way to just manage some consistency offensively in a playoff series. So I look at this Rockets group, and yeah, they've got their obvious weaknesses, and yet they're still good enough. I mean, 16-6 is a pretty solid overall record at this point in the season. And I think they're a good group. I don't know. Again, this is group. You see this team, and I don't know that they're liable to make any kind of changes at any point during this season. I think I don't know that they're going to make any significant upgrades, and yet they still have a competent enough roster where they're going to be challengers. I don't know. And you saw this team add Kevin Durant over the offseason, and I think a lot of people were quick to say, okay, they're in contentious status. And yet I don't know that anybody ever really pictured Oklahoma City being this historically dominant, where they've clearly established themselves as the best team in the NBA right now. So it almost feels like everybody else, even a second tier of teams like Denver, like Houston, they're kind of just playing for number 2 at this point because Oklahoma City is as good as they are. So maybe all these questions about this Rockets group are just basically moot anyway.
Yeah, and the Rockets do have a lot of questions, and what's so interesting about them is that they might be in a position where, to no fault of their own, that they can't really improve, because the one area that I'd really love to see them add is to that guard rotation, and losing Fred VanVleet in the offseason, but who's going to be out there at the deadline that's really going to make a difference? Because if they can protect the ball and have a guy who can score a little bit on the ball, but most importantly, set the table for Alpi, set the table for Kevin Durant, but still fits their defensive identity, because that's the most important part. Like, their defense is what's going to end up, if they do push OKC, if they do push Denver, if they do get to the finals, it's going to end up being their calling card. Who fits all of those aspects to want to go add at the deadline, and that would be available? It's very tricky, because with Houston, at least they have a path. Like, if you're looking at the top of the league, and let's start with OKC, because that'd be the biggest threat to Houston. Their defense can legitimately give Shea problems. Their defense can legitimately, for as much as you can, slow down a player that's an all-time great scorer, can legitimately slow him down and at least bring the game to a crawl and make it a rock fight and try to win it late. Shea's, of course, been the best clutch time scorer in the league, but you at least give yourself a chance if you have the game competitive in the late stages of the fourth quarter. But the problem would be, Shea is still a great clutch time scorer. The Thunder still have Chet and J-Dub to try to help them in those scenarios. And Houston's relying a lot on a predictable Alpi and KD tandem, that if they had better ball protection, if they had better table setters, you'd feel really good about them. And I just don't know that someone's going to pop up between now and February that's going to be worth adding to fill that gap.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm trying to think of any potential names that are out there. It just doesn't really feel like, of the lower rung teams in the NBA right now, like, who's going to be a seller who might be able to give up that kind of competent level guard that might put Houston over the top. So I think what we're seeing from this group is pretty much what you're going to get, and they're going to have to find a way to, again, like you said, I think if they can keep things competitive and then maybe get a couple lucky breaks here, but I don't know. I still see this group, and I'm not quite sold on them. Maybe not to the extent as another team that we'll be talking about later on, at least in Denver. I think they're probably a shade better than what we've seen from the Houston Rockets.
Yeah, I would agree that I think that Denver has cleared Houston in their own tier. If you don't want to put them in the tier of OKC, they're at least by themselves in terms of the biggest threats. But then you go to the flip side of the Clippers, and they have Kawhi in this game. They have Harden in this game. They have their guys, and they've had their guys, and they've been playing well. I mean, I know that this game got a little bit messy efficient-wise, but the Rockets make everybody messy efficient-wise because of their defense. And right now, this is not a math pod, but by my math, they'd have to go at a 50-win pace just to break 500 on the season. It's getting late early to turn this ship around with the Clippers, who sit at 6-19 right now, with the third best lottery odds in the NBA, which of course that pick goes to OKC. And I've at least had some hope for the Clippers that they could not turn it around to the extent that people were, vaunting them up in the offseason as like a top 6 seed in the West, but like they could sneak into the play-in. And now it's getting to the point where it's like, man, there's literally nothing that they can do to get out of this rut whenever they're playing like this, losing 3 straight, and they've had their guys.
Feels a little personal, because I was one of those guys that had them as one of the top teams in the Western Conference.
I mean, the depth this offseason, the depth moves looked good. You could kind of talk yourself into the Clippers easily, but now that we've seen it happen, and Bradley Beal's out for the season, and he wasn't playing well before that, it's like, man, what do they do?
Nothing. I think that you just see this group, and they're engaged, and then you see that almost one of the last plays of the game, where Nick Batum, they're down 3 at that point, and he winds up trying to inbound the ball after free throws had pushed the lead to 3. And it's a clutch situation here. You're still in the game. You maybe have a good possession, and he steps over the inbounds line and winds up turning the ball over. The team just doesn't feel like they have it. And I don't know what they're playing for at this point either. Like, there's personal pride, but I don't know that we've seen that. And then, of course, the whole Chris Paul debacle in that situation there. It just feels like this is a team that has lost any kind of sense of identity, and all these additions and whatever it was that did seem encouraging over the offseason just haven't paid off, because something is missing. And I wonder if it's just, and it seems kind of reductive or easy to pick at this, but, the leadership of James Harden and Kawhi Leonard, their issues, whether it's Kawhi's inconsistency or unavailability in terms of how he's going to be out there to play or not, and Harden and his questionable leadership throughout his career. It seems like this is a ship that's kind of rudderless out there. It doesn't really have a true purpose. So when you look at this group, I don't know that they're going to find it. I don't think they are, to be honest with you. I think they're just going to continue floundering, and we'll see what happens, unless they go on some kind of ridiculous historic run. And as you pointed out, even that wouldn't be enough to actually make them a decent team at this time.
Yeah, the losses are piling up, and they've kind of buried themselves. And you mentioned it perfectly. Like, the leadership on that team is not great, even after the Chris Paul fiasco. And so, as I had them at the 5th seed in the West preseason, I was dead wrong about that prediction. But coming up, let's talk about something that we were right on: the Denver Nuggets being the biggest threat to OKC. Is this the best roster Denver's ever put around Nikola Jokic? But first, I want to say right now, my good friends over at Quo, folks, go check them out today, because the new year means new systems. And this is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of running a business and think there has to be a better way. Well, there is. Today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. If you're ready to make your workday smoother and keep customers connected without the headaches, Quo makes upgrading your setup easier than ever. Go there right now, because they have a streamlined system that makes such a big difference when communicating with customers. Having calls, texts, and voicemail in one clean view keeps everything organized and helps you stay responsive. The AI summaries and call logging can feel like having an assistant keeping track of every little detail. It's surprisingly easy. You can work from your phone or your computer, keep your existing number, and add teammates in minutes. Make this time of year a year where you can say, you know what? We're done with missed opportunities. We're done with missing customers. We're not letting that slip away anymore. Trying Quo today for free, plus getting 20% off of your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnba. That's quo.com/lockedonnba. Quo, no missed calls and no missed customers. Also want to say right now, my good friends over at FanDuel, folks. FanDuel is incredible because, as you know, if you're a big NFL fan, NFL Sundays move fast. One play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets on the action as it unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best whenever the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, and the momentum flips on a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment with live spreads and money lines adjusting instantly, player props updating as guys heat up. You can bet on the next touchdown scores, the drive results, the totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possession. Go there right now to FanDuel.com and be in the middle of the action all season long by placing your NFL live bets all year. FanDuel, the game moves fast, so you can too. We're back on the Locked On NBA Game Night podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day, the number one sports podcast network in the world. I'm Rylan Stiles, Locked On Thunder. That's David Ramil, Locked On Heat. And we've talked about a lot of the games today. We still have 2 more to go. One of them being the Denver Nuggets routing the Sacramento Kings 136-105. Nikola Jokic was stellar as always. 36 points on 87% shooting from the floor, 2 for 2 from 3, 12 rebounds, 8 assists, 2 steals, and he's flanked by a 16-point night from Cam Johnson. Jamal Murray had 11 points on 30% shooting, but he's been on a recent heater. As we know, he can really fill it up. His backup, Jonas Valanciunas, had 15 points on 7 for 7 shooting with 6 more rebounds and 2 assists. This team here, with the optionality that they have by being able to go into their bench of Bruce Brown, of Tim Hardaway Jr., of Valanciunas, in the regular season, that is, knowing that you have added a guy like Cam Johnson, who can do, I think, a little bit more for you offensively than Michael Porter Jr., especially once he gets that chemistry built up with Nikola Jokic. Is this the best roster that Denver has put around Nikola Jokic? You're very familiar with the championship roster that they put around him, but this team, feels a little different to me.
Yeah. If you told me that Jamal Murray was going to score just 11 points on 4-13 shooting and you wouldn't have Aaron Gordon at all in the lineup and the Nuggets would still wind up winning by 31, I would be very surprised at that. I would not have considered that would be a possibility. But this does feel like a group that's capable of just being great, even without those key components there. Like with Jokic playing at yet another MVP level here. We've seen him be great, historically great over the last few seasons, and he just continues to improve somehow. It feels so easy to him at this stage in his career where he's just so dominant. And yet the rest of the roster now feels like it's been perfectly assembled to kind of help provide the support he needs to kind of continue to get better throughout the course of the season. So I do think it's the best group that they've been able to build around Jokic, and that makes them, at least in my opinion, legitimately dangerous in the Western Conference. And I do have them in that kind of contender status. I think I would say, honestly, right now, looking at the landscape of the league, you have OKC at the top. I would put Denver clearly second, and then maybe Houston and all these other teams kind of scattered there. Even above anybody out in the East, as good as Detroit's been, I think there are still legitimate questions about them. But the Nuggets just they have that championship experience. They have the Jokic factor there. That's just such a really, really competent, solid, and deep bunch there that it looks poised to make some kind of a very deep run in the playoffs.
Yeah, we're in lockstep. I think that it's the Thunder and Denver and then everybody else in the entire NBA, much less the Western Conference. And Denver took this Thunder team to 7 games a year ago while being banged up themselves, losing Aaron Gordon in that series after he tried to play game 7, but he was dealing with that hamstring injury. Jamal Murray had the flu at the end of the series. And then, of course, we know Michael Porter Jr. couldn't even lift his shoulder, couldn't even lift his arm during the whole series. And they still went to 7 games. And with the Thunder being as healthy as you can be at that part of the season. I mean, I know that Jalen Williams, of course, J-Dub, had the ligaments torn in his wrist, but it's as healthy as you can possibly be whenever you get that late into the season. And you know what a matchup nightmare it is to game plan around Nikola Jokic. And even whenever the Thunder put out there the best defensive coverages of Jokic in the postseason of his career, they still nearly beat OKC, who went on to win the championship games. It's no surprise to see them beat up on the Sacramento Kings, but to do that in a game where they still don't have Christian Brown, they still don't have Aaron Gordon, both those guys have been out for an extended amount of time here, they're only going to get better, and this game really flexed how deep that they are and how well that they've assembled a team around Jokic whenever they faced a lot of questions after that Oklahoma City series of how could they try to improve this offseason. They've threaded that needle perfectly, and it's bearing out the fruits of their labor so far this season. The last game on the docket, the Portland Trailblazers get stomped by the New Orleans Pelicans. I mean, what just happened? Again, the preseason, we were talking about the spunky Portland Trailblazers and the Trailblazers who made a good run at the play-in last year before falling out of contention. And this year, it's been a totally different ball game for the Portland Trailblazers, and they now lose to the New Orleans Pelicans, who got 24 points from Trey Murphy. We're able to get 17 points from Derek Queen, who's really had a stellar rookie season despite the talk around him. Jeremiah Fears has also been really good for them as a rookie. He had 19. Jordan Poole had 22 in this game. And then off the bench, Bryce McGowan's had 23 points for New Orleans. A nice feel-good win for New Orleans, who, of course, has not gotten many of those, but also a really painful loss for Portland, because whenever you see the Pelicans on the schedule, you should be expecting it to get back in that win column.
Yeah, these games just happen, right, over the course of the season, at least to these bad teams. You would kind of look at this Portland group, and I think you would say that they're better than the Pelicans are, and certainly the record reflects that, but you're going to have off nights, and I don't attribute it necessarily to any kind of gap in the schedule or anything like that, but the Pelicans just looked like they had one of those nights where they were really dialed in. McGowan's in particular looked phenomenal. Murphy was great, really solid performances. And Portland, may have just been looking past an inferior opponent there and just didn't play well. But I think the Pelicans also played a pretty solid game. They did a really good job of limiting Denny Avdija. Was just 5 of 15, and he's been their best player all season. So he was held to 16 points. He looked pretty flummoxed by New Orleans defense, something that I don't think we've had any opportunity to really say over the course of the season. Their defense hasn't been great at any stretch, but they were good tonight against a pretty inconsistent Portland team, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, it is a feel-good story for New Orleans in a season that has not had a lot of great things to talk about besides Derek Queen.
Is it really a feel-good story? It's kind of
it's as feel-good as you can get in the Bayou right now. There's a lot going on. I mean, they're worried about Lane Kiffin still down there. They don't care what's going on in the Smoothie King Center. But, David, I'm glad to be joining you on Thursday nights. And we've talked about how the break. And it kind of alludes to the fact that it feels at this time of year, David, everybody just blames everything on the NBA Cup. It's like, the Celtics got beat by the Bucks. It's the NBA Cup's fault. I want to know our official Thursday NBA game night stance on the Cup, because I'm all in. Are you all in on the NBA Cup?
Absolutely. I've been in since the beginning. I was a little skeptical at first and felt like it was being forced, and maybe fans didn't really quite understand the whole standings and what do these games matter, or how does it tie into the regular season? But I love the enthusiasm from the players and just seeing them want to play for something. Ultimately, these are the best and most competitive players in the league and the world, rather. And so when they have something at stake here and they feel the challenges, you saw the games kind of develop this great kind of sort of quasi playoff intensity in the course of the middle of the season. And that's great because, the 82 game season is long, not just for the players, but for us covering it. And so when you see these games have this additional meaning to it, it's hard not to get up. So I've been excited about the Cup since the very beginning, and I'm still excited about it. I think it's been great. You love seeing the intensity and the players really kind of buy into the whole process.
I'm right there with you. We are once again in lockstep here about the Cup. I love it. And also, it's like, okay, sell me a beachfront property house in Kansas for all I care. Whenever you're talking about, poor pitiful us, we got 4 days off in the middle of the regular season, which all we do anymore is complain about how long it is and how taxing it is. But with the 4 days off here, it really cost us the game. I mean, you can't have it both ways. You just ended up getting beat, and it didn't have anything to do with the rest versus rust factor of your rhythm being thrown off in a taxing season. But the NBA Cup here to stay. The games resume again on Saturday, so Friday night will be a night of non-Cup participants as we get down to the Final Four. But nonetheless, they'll be back in action, so it's always good to have that. We'll have Locked In NBA Game Night for you on Friday, recapping everything that happened across the association and, of course, all throughout the week. Make sure you tune in for that. Thank you so much for listening. David, this was a lot of fun. Until next time, be good and be good to one another.